Today I'm going to show you how I turn a natural edge bowl out of this piece of holly. Okay, so this is the piece of holly. I've got the ruler here so we can see. It is approximately 7 3/4, nearly 8 inches in length, and it's about just over 7 inches in width, or that will be the diameter. Okay, so now I'm just marking out the centre of the bowl just by matching the corners to the corners, and then measuring the radius of the diameter of the bowl from the centre out. Take that over to the miter saw. That's about right. Bit of noise just for a sec. Okay, so I've just cut the ends off down to length. I'm just marking out now where the corners need to be cut to make the bowl effectively into an octagon at this stage. Now I can chop the corners off to reduce how much I need to turn. It's also worth saying that unfortunately I don't have a bandsaw at the moment. However, a bandsaw with a circle cutting jig would be a lot quicker and easier and probably safer as well. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to show you now how to man this. I'm going to use a face plate. Okay, so if I measure just off the edge of the chuck, if I measure that's 2 inches that side, that's just under 2 inches, so we'll move it over a tad, just under 2, and the same this way, just eyeing it in, that's about 2, so that's pretty much in the middle. I'm just going to okay, so this is all screwed in. We'll take it over to the lathe and pop it on. So just offer that up, and then instead of having to spin the piece, on this lathe I've got a hand wheel which is quite handy. So I can just spin the hand wheel until it starts to bite and just wind it in. Just of course check that it spins over the bed of the lathe. We've got a good bit of clearance there actually, so I know I can probably turn an 8 or a 9 inch diameter bowl on this lathe. I haven't done so yet. I've only had it for a couple of months. I've mainly been doing spindle work and small bowls on here, just using up odd offcuts. So I'm just going to pop my goggles on. Safety first. As we're coming to the bark, I'm quite fortunate on this holly. The bark has shrunk really nicely with the timber and has stayed really tight. I physically can't pull it off if I wanted to, which is normally one of the problems you get in turning a natural edge piece. It's gone really well. So what you can do, although you should always be coming from the smallest diameter to the largest when you're turning a bowl orientation of grain, where the grain's running this way instead of this way, to preserve the bark coming from this way, so you're only pushing the bark into the timber, so it's not going to come off. Whereas what I have been doing is pushing away from it, pushing it into the air, where it could have peeled off, but as I say, it stayed on there quite nicely. So I'm pretty fortunate about that. I'm just going to try and finish treeing this up. I'm just going to put, I've got this, it's basically super glue and an activator to make it dry super quick. I know super glue dries pretty quick anyway, but this is just so I don't have to wait at all. So I just rub that in there. This is quite thin as well, which is really good for this. Just a couple light sprays. Okay, and then that should dry literally in about 10 seconds. probably touch. There we go, that's touch dry already. There we go. So I'll leave that until I come back sanding, just in case it needs a little bit longer to cure fully. So I'm only wanting the wing of the tool to do the work on this particular cut. Okay, so bring the lathe to a stop. Just as a rough guide, offering the chuck up. If you want to come over here, you can see that's the jaws roughly where I want to be. It doesn't fit yet, so I just want to clean it up, make it a tiny bit smaller. It'll probably be alright as it is actually. This is my super duper special squiffy tool. You can use a skew chisel, but mine's not in great nick. I've murdered it. I tried sharpening it badly. So I've upcycled an old screwdriver that I managed to break. The ends on modern ones are hard and it might work better. This one I've just put an angle on it, bevel, and a relief cut on the back as well. It's perfect for getting in to have the edge parallel with the dovetail and then this edge square with the bottom of the bowl for cleaning it up. It doesn't give an amazing cut, but it's good enough for a tenon. There we go. So we can see the shape now of the tenon. I'll just mine the torus out of the way. We can try the 4-jaw chuck on the back. Okay, that fits on there nicely. There we go, that's a nice fit. Chuck's running nice and centre, so everything's okay there. So now I've got that on there, I'm just going to shape the profile of the bottom of the bowl. Just bring it round, make it a bit more gentle, and then it'll be ready for later on when we're going to part the tenon off. I'm just using a pull cut again, using the wing of the tool. Contact with the tool rest, very lightly bringing it in and round. It's tricky to see what's actually happening when the tool's just filling up with shavings. I find a square scraper for doing curve work, external curves, is really useful. So you can choose which point of the tool you're using. If one part gets dull, you can just move to another part. Really easy to control. Okay. So we've put a nice curve on the bottom of the bowl, just lift it up slightly, it's just going to blend it in a tiny bit more with the rest of the shape that we already had from earlier. There we go, I can feel that flows really nicely now, so that just needs a sanding up, and then we can reverse it. One thing I will do quickly, for lining it up later to remove this tenon, I'm going to bring the tailstock up and just put a dent in the bottom, and that helps us line it up later when we come to part it off. That's put a nice dent in the piece there, everything running true. We can come back to that later as a reference point for lining it up. Okay, so now it's time to sand, everybody's favourite part, the turning. For the sake of this video, I'm not going to have the extraction on because it's quite noisy. I do have an extraction system, it's currently on the thicknesser. Okay, so I've just finished sanding the bowl up to the outside of the bowl, sorry. up to 400 grit. I did find a tiny bit of silicon carbide actually, so I'm going to use some of this food safe oil. And the good thing as well is when you come to sand the bottom, and you part the tenon off the bottom and sand over it, it's really easy to just put a bit of oil over it. You don't have to worry about trying to blend in the wax too much. Just a tiny squeeze. Okay, so now I've got to take this off the lathe. Right, I'm going to take it back over to the other bench. So now I'm mounting the 4-jaw scroll chuck. Moment of truth. That sits really nicely there, with the shoulder of the bottom of the bowl and the bottom of the tenon going in there nicely. I'm not sure how thick I'm going to do this one yet, it depends how much I like the bark rim, so I'm just going to start hollowing out the middle and we'll see how it looks. Well, the bark's staying on really nicely. This is going to be quite nice. I almost like it really chunky, like this, but a proper turner might make it 3mm thick. So what I'm going to do is go a bit further and see how it looks just a little bit thinner. Measuring it off the side, the bowl is just over 1/8 of an inch, about 9–10mm thick. Yeah, about 10mm thick, which isn't particularly thin. If you're doing a thin bowl, it's probably going to be something like 3 or 4mm. But I am a little bit worried about those cracks, so I want to give it a bit of meat to hold it together. It's a good excuse anyway. Side of this crack, if we come back and look at the outside of the bowl here, that crack that we filled earlier, I actually had to come back and put some more super glue in it, which by the time I turned it off and sanded it, the glue hadn't gone all the way in the gap. but I went over it, and because I'd oiled it, I just managed to put some more of the super glue on there with the activator, dried 10 seconds, and then chisel it off with a really sharp chisel, a cabinet maker's chisel. Just scrape off the top layer so it was only what was left there, and then sanded it off quick. And because it was oil, I just sanded it back in that area, and each grit I went up, I just went slightly wider to help sort of blend it in, and back to 400 grit, and then just some of that food safe oil that I use over the top. And there's no sort of overlap mark anywhere because oil doesn't technically cure, so it stays active, whereas a wax sets, so you get sort of overlap lines and things. You can try and blend it in, but oil's just easier. So I'm going to put some super glue. I'll sand it back roughly, probably with 120 actually, just for speed. And then, I don't know if you can see here, just here above my finger, that's on the inside where the crack is. It doesn't come down anywhere near as far. So when I've sanded it all, just get the marks out, I'll put a bit of super glue in there, spray the activator, and then sand it off again to leave it in the crack, and yeah, clean up the rest of the bowl. Right, what we need to do now, the scary bit, we take it off. Apologies for that. It's the camera woman. Right, so we're undoing the chuck now. If we want to bring the camera around here, we can see. Just going to undo the jaws of the chuck now. And what we've got here is that centre hole from where we made a dent with the tailstock. So what we can do now, I need to find something to go in the four jaws of the scroll chuck that I can put this against. It won't damage it, so I'll pad it with some paper or something. Pop that in there, bring the tailstock up into the back of this, and then we're going to turn the tenon, and then I'll wind the tailstock centre into the back of the bowl. I'll bring the tool rest in. Doing it too close. Okay, so I'm just going to try and reduce this tenon. I've actually made another screwdriver jobby here. This is a miniature round nose scraper that I used, an old screwdriver. It's nothing fancy, so I'm not ruining an antique, but it isn't a brand new one. So I know this is quite sharp. I might try this one just to get in there because it's nice and small. Okay, I think that's as far as I'm going to go with this one. I think that's going to do. I'm not brave enough to go any further with that. So calm down, everything out of the way. You don't want to put any dents in it at this stage. So tool rest, banjo out the way. Loosen off the tailstock, travel, bring the tailstock back out. Slide the tailstock all the way out of the way. Ah, that's very, there we go. So I can take this mouse mat stuff out and actually rest it on that, on here, and that shouldn't really do any damage, it shouldn't dig in. I'll get a chisel to chisel that bit off and then just sand it in. This is one of my furniture making chisels. It's nice and sharp. I haven't used it very often. Just going nice and slow. I don't want to slip and put a giant gouge in it. Coming in from the other end. Notice I'm not using a hammer, just kind of wiggling it around. There we go, I did slip a tiny bit there. And I was going with the grain, I'm just going to go against the grain, or the other way around. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So I'm just going to get some 120 on that. I'll just pop that on there. I think the camera will pick up the shine, might not pick up the colour so well. There we go. Doesn't really matter how you apply it, but I try and do the finishing strokes with the grain, just in case there is any streaks in the rag, and then again it's not going to show up so bad. I think that's it. Okay, so here we are, the finished product. Holly bowl. I'll just grab a ruler so we can see the final measurements. We started off with a 7-inch blank. We've got something that was finished up at, whoa, that's bad news, just over 6 inches in diameter, but that was, we were measuring off the bottom, which was the wider point. Not too bad really, I've lost a lot more in the past. The shallowest point of the rim is about 2.5 inches. So that's about 62, 63 mil, something like that. Highest part, it's probably around here where that crack is actually. So yeah, that's about 65 mil, so yeah, about this, not that different actually, yeah, just over 2.5 rather than just under. That's the bottom of the bowl again, just so you can see. I don't know if the light's very good there. So that's the shape we've got. Comes in, down a bit, and then just swoops up just a tiny bit. That little nub in there, but that's come out really nicely. I'm really happy with that. I don't finish a bowl at the bottom very often like that. I normally have a recess and just sand it up, clean it up, leave it at that, but it's a little bit more special. It's quite hard to get hold of Holly. Here's the big crack that I was worried about. I've got these other little cracks coming out of there, but they seem fairly stable. It doesn't look very nice, I'll be honest. A bit disappointed with how it looks. I should have tried to mix up some really fine dust probably and put that in there, at least so it was the same colour. I haven't yet tried mixing super glue with sort of metal dust or epoxy of metal dust. That's something I'm really interested in trying out. I've seen a few other people do it. Things like copper dust, brass or bronze, some really nice metal colours in there. But I haven't tried that yet, so I'm not going to risk that on here. But the crack's stable. The inside of the crack you can barely see. That did get a bit more dust in it. So that one's pretty good. The light's not very good, sorry about that. So yeah, the bark has stayed on really nicely. So yeah, overall I'm very happy with the piece. I think I'll just display it that way round. Yeah, something like that. I think that looks quite nice. So thanks for watching my video. This is the first video in my series. We'll call it episode 1, Natural Edge Bowl. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate any comments or feedback, likes. Please subscribe. I'm going to try and do a video roughly once a month, maybe fortnightly, and we'll see how it goes from there. If no one watches them, I probably won't bother making videos, but I'll carry on turning. And if people seem to like it, then I'll try and do them as often as I can. I've self-taught for about 5 years now. I've done a lot of weird things, a lot of conventional things, and pretty much everything in between. But I thought it's a good way for me to learn, and it's a good way to share and give back to the turning community by doing some videos. So I know I've learned a lot from watching other people's. So yeah, please leave a comment, like, subscribe. My name's Chris. You've been in the shed with Chris. Until next time. So yeah, thank you very much.
It's in the shed with Chris.
It's on the board.
Zooming in to the...
Hello there, my name's Chris.
Why are you laughing? Just do it.
In the shed.
Yes. We'll cut that bit out.
Okay.
Ready? Go.
That's quite a nice small actually, that'd be quite good. Okay, do I have the right size spanner to take off? I need it.
Don't start just yet because the camera's a bit misted up.
Hmm?
Don't start just yet because the camera lens is a bit misted. Just to
Did
let
you just
know.
blow it?
Yes. Battery's dead.
Is it?